Alright, let's start out talking about masteries. So, masteries in the jungle are, I guess they aren't too difficult once you get the hang of them. So, first thing you need to think about is your champion, the team comp, and what keystone mastery you're going to be taking. So, usually the two that I normally take would be Strength of the Ages and Thunderlords, though you could also go Storm Raider Surge or Deathfire Touch or Fervor of Battle or Warlord's Bloodlust, depending on what champion you're playing. I just feel that Thunderlord's Decree and Strength of the Ages is the two main ones that really actually help you out in the jungle. There aren't really many that actually do, but so let's get into it. So once you've decided on your Keystone Mastery, you're also going to have to think about, okay, am I going to go tanky or am I going to go damage? So if I'm going damage, I'll go 12, 18, 0. If I'm going tanky, I'll go 0, 12, 18. So let's start off talking about the tanky stuff. So let's start at the top. So when we're deciding between recovery and unyielding, basically we want to think, okay, do we want this to help us out for our early game or our late game? Because unyielding only affects your bonus armor and magic resist. So early game, you aren't going to really have much of that, with any, so early game, I usually start off just my jungle item and boots, and then I'll start building something else that might have armor or magic resist. So that doesn't really start helping until like 10 minutes in or so, depending on how fed you are. Maybe 20 if you're having a bad game. So usually I just take recovery, just because that's what helps me best in the jungle. Early game, that helps you gain more health, and so you're healthier for ganks and in between camps and stuff like that. So Explorer or Tough Skin. So taking 2 less damage from champion and neutral monster basic attacks. 2 damage isn't a ton. I prefer having the 15 movement speed in Brush and River just because you go a lot faster for ganks. So you're going to be in wards a lot less time. It'll give the enemy a lot less time to react to your gank if they do have it even warded. So Runic Armor or Veteran Scars. So that really depends on which champion you're playing. If you're playing a champion that has lots of healing in their kit, or shields or something like that, you could consider taking Runic Armor for that extra 8% healing and lifesteal and stuff. Usually, though, I end up taking Veteran Scars, just because that 45 health can really help early game, because no one has any resists or anything early game, so it's pretty much about who survives the longest, and that 45 health can help a bit with that. So that's just what I prefer. You can also consider Runic Armor. So Insight or Perseverance. So Insight gives the 15% cooldown on summoner spells. But with jungles, you're probably going to just be taking Flash and Smite most of the time. Maybe instead of Flash, you can take Ignite or Teleport or Exhaust or something if you want to get crazy. But so that Insight Mastery would really only affect your Flash, and because your Smite's on already such a low cooldown, you aren't going to be getting much benefit out of that from Insight. So I do prefer Perseverance, that 50% base health regen, and 200% when below 25% HP. Is really good. And if we're thinking Swiftness or Legendary Guardian, I do prefer Swiftness just because of how difficult it is to get to Nasty in the game right now. And like I said, Strength of the Ages is what I usually do for my Keystone. Grasp of Undying, that's just not very good for junglers because you aren't going to be attacking enemy champions much. as much, so you aren't going to be proccing that heal very often at all, like only when you gank, maybe. So Bond of Stone then, um, it gives you damage reduction, that's pretty good, but it's the 6% damage taking from the nearby allies that helps, that it's taken for the most, so that's can help later game, but I just prefer Strength of the Ages because you can get up to 300 HP, extra HP, for your late game. So, and then after you get the 300 HP stacked, then kills on the siege minions and large monsters get you restore 6% of your maximum health, which is good. So, Savagery or Wanderer. I usually only take Savagery in lane just because it helps me to CS better. So I do prefer Wanderer. Same reason as I take Explorer. You know, that extra move speed really helps. So based on these three, well, you're never going to be taking Assassin as a tank because you aren't really going to worry about doing damage. So basically you just have to decide between Runic Affinity and Secret Stash. So if I'm going to be taking the refillable potion early, I'll usually take Runic Affinity. But if I'm not, I'll usually take Secret Stash. Of course, there are some champions that taking Secret Stash doesn't really benefit as much. I actually find myself taking Runic Infinity more often than not, just because of the champion pool that I play. So Merciless or Meditation. So that's again just based off of your champion. The times that you'll take Meditation is if you ever can see yourself having struggles with mana, like early or late game. So like if you're playing like a Nidalee jungle or something like that, I guess a tank Nidalee jungle. But so for a tanky champion, something like a Mumu or something like that, who uses a lot of mana, because after you give up the blue buff to your mid laner or top laner or AD carry, whatever, whoever decides that it's theirs, you aren't going to get much mana regen because there aren't any jungle builds that I can think of that actually build in mana regen. I guess one of the jungle items does kind of help with that, but not much. So again, Meditation if you're gonna need mana, Merciless otherwise, just because if you don't use mana at all or you don't have mana problems, you might as well get that 5% increased damage. And so Bandit or Dangerous Game, never take Bandit in the jungle. Always go Dangerous Game if you have to decide between the two. Because Bandit's really just good, useful in lane, because you get the 1 extra gold for each nearby minion killed by an ally. Well, if you're in the jungle, there aren't going to be very many minions nearby, or even allies nearby, especially early game, so that you aren't going to be using that much at all. And then the second part of the passive, the extra gold when you hit an enemy champion on a 5-second cooldown. Yeah, once again, it's the same thing as Grasp of the Undying, same reason that I have there. You aren't really going to be proccing that very often, so it's just better to go Dangerous Game. So that's kind of like what my tanky jungle page would look like. Again, there are those tweaks that I talked about that you can always do, just depending on what you're playing and what your role is. So if you're going to be going a damage jungler, like I said, I go 12-18-0 most of the time. Sometimes you can go 18-12-0, like if you're playing Tryndamere jungle, you have your critical strikes that you always have, so that can help, or Fervor of Battle, or Deathfire Touch, but again, these ones, they only work on champions, so they'll only be useful late game. So same kind of reason as Grasping and Dying, you aren't going to be proccing these very much early, if at all. Because like for Fervor, you have to generate stacks first, and then, then you'll be actually doing stuff. So those ones I usually don't take. That's why I usually go 12, 18, 0. So let's talk about the Ferocity tree first. So if you're trying to decide between the increased attack speed or increased ability damage, well, you basically just have to think, does my champion use more auto attacks or more abilities? If you're someone like Master Yi or Shyvana or something like that, or a Devourer Jungles and Zhao, something like that, then you'll definitely want to go the attack speed. But if you're someone who actually just relies on their abilities and doesn't really auto attack much, so it could be someone like Lee Sin or any AP jungler, Nidalee, it could be Graves, even Diana, something like that. Because it's not just your like magic abilities, it's not ability power, it's abilities. So like your Q, W, E, and R, that's what it is. It's not just your ability power stuff. So decide between those two just based off of the champion you're playing. So double-edged sword or feast. I usually go feast just because, well, I personally don't play many assassin junglers. If you are playing an assassin jungler, someone like Kha'Zix or Rengar or something, then double-edged sword can be good for, just assassinating those people faster later game. And so I normally just take vampirism over natural talent, just because that 2% life spill and spell vamp helps a lot more than an extra 2 attack damage and 3 ability power at level 18. Like, that's not very much at all. You aren't going to notice it, so that's why I just go vampirism pretty much all the time. Bounty Hunter is actually not a great mastery. Like, if you do plan on killing all 5 enemy champions at least once, sure, go ahead and take it, but the thing is, you have to kill all 5 at once. Whereas with Oppressor, you deal 2.5% increased damage when anyone has their impaired movement, so like a slow or stun or something, which happens a lot more often and it's a lot more reliable. So it's just a lot more reliable if you're, like, if you ever get behind, you don't have to worry about it. Whereas if you're behind and you have Bounty Hunter, you're never going to notice it. You're never going to get that buff. So that's what I go in my Ferocity tree, the 12. For Cunning, it's kind of the same discussion as with the tank stuff. So same thing here, I go Wanderer. The only thing that we have to add here is Assassin. So if you are playing an Assassin champion, then you can consider taking Assassin. I still usually take one of these two, just depending on who I'm playing. Again, same thing here. If you're going to be having mana problems, take meditation. If you're going to be like taking an energy champion or something like that, and take Merciless, or someone who doesn't actually need much mana regen at all. Once again, here, never take Bandit. Always go Dangerous Game. If you're trying to decide between precision and intelligence, so the intelligence, I would really only use that is if I have a high pressure ultimate that's on a super long cooldown normally, and just because that 5% CDR can help early game, it'll help you actually with your ganks and stuff, so you'll be able to put more pressure on the map. So that'd be someone like Rengar or Nocturne or Pantheon or Amumu, someone who has that high, well, Amumu I'd never take it because I go 0, 12, 18, but, though someone who has those high cooldown ultimates, that's really game changing. So you could also include Vi or something like that, where it's basically guaranteed that you will get a successful gank if you have your ultimate up, either by blowing summoners or getting kills. So that's really the only time that I'll take that one. Usually I do take precision, um, just because that's, um, I don't know, that's how I play. I don't really play those champions that have the high cooldown ults, um, and when I do, I don't know, I just prefer the penetration. And then Thunderlord's Decree, so like I said, Storm Raider Surge, you can take that, but it's not going to help you at all early because it has the champions. It's, again, it's based off of champions, so you're going to deal 30 damage, 30% of the champion's max health. That's not going to happen much early. And then Windspeaker's Blessing, yeah, your heals and shields are stronger. Well, okay. That's not going to matter much at all early game, so that's why I do prefer Thunderlord's Decree. So I personally just have one page that before each game I'll just reset and then decide which way I want to do each one, just so like I can be sure that I'm taking what's best for that particular game based off of what champion I'm playing and what my role will kind of be in that game. Um, but when you're first starting with the Masteries, I do recommend just having a few basic pages set out, just because it can take a while to actually like get used to setting up all the masteries. Um, like you'll never remember which one's Fury, which one's Sorcery for the first little bit. Like I remember now, so I can just quickly, wow, I can quickly set up my page. Like this would be my page for Lee Sin right here. Sometimes I get Sorcery though. So this would be like my page for Lee Sin right here. But if I'm going taking Lee Sin, then I can just go like real quick. I can go like that, and ooh, and boom, that's my tanky Lee Sin. But early game, I'm not early game, earlier levels, you know, it'll take you longer to actually get used to setting up your mastery. So that's why I recommend just having a few basic pages set up. Maybe like one for an ability damage jungler, one for an auto attack damage jungler, and one for a tanky jungler. And then, of course, you can always just go in and switch between, like, Merciless and Meditation is the main one that you want to switch between, based on if you have that um, jungler who needs mana regen, and that one who doesn't. So that's kind of what I would look for in Masteries on the jungle.